So we'll start over again. Welcome to wppompey on the 16th of August 2023. Today we're going to talk about WordPress Multisite. And I, Herb Miller, I'm going to give you an introduction to WordPress Multisite. And then we'll have Paul Bunkham from WordUp Brighton talking about WordPress.com as much as he can tell us. And we'll have some questions. And let's see how it goes. This meeting is being recorded, and this is WordPress Multisite. Now, there's a few words on this thing. They come straight from a video by Jonathan Bossinger on learn.wordpress.org. There is the link there at the bottom. The slides are available on wppompey.org.uk, so you can view those slides and you can click on the links and it would take you to those links. This is a 7-minute video in which he introduces WordPress Multisite, which is a collection of WordPress sites that share a single WordPress installation. And you can have users who can create their own sites or configure a network so that only administrators can create sites. Solitary. And all the sites on the multi-site network use the same installation of WordPress, and they share the same plugins and themes. The plugins and themes installed on the network are then activated either across the network or individually on different sites. And each individual site has its own place for uploads of files, and they also have separate tables in which their data is stored. So the sites are not directly interconnected. Now, all of that comes from the introduction to WordPress, which you can see on that video. So when I published this meetup, I asked the simple question, what experience do you have with WordPress Multisite? And we have so far 4 people said none at all. 11 said some I know a bit, involving I tried it once, I know a bit, and some people said lots, I have a multi-site network, that's 5 people, and I said I'm an expert, I have multiple networks. In fact, I even have a multi-network installation, which is probably past 101. So let's see how we can get on with more than 50% of us not really knowing all that much about WordPress Multisite. If you want to ask questions, ask them in the chat, and hopefully someone will see them and we'll get to reply to them, or stick your hand up and I might see that and we can reply to them when we get to the particular item you're talking about. So here again, this is the video that you could watch, Jonathan Bossinger, learn.wordpress.org, and the link down there. In the video, he tells you that you're going to go and read this thing, WordPress.org documentation, before you create a network, and then create a network. But if you want to install WordPress Multisite, then it's fairly simple. Watch the video, read the links, and it will tell you all about it. Take a backup of your site, because that's what WordPress suggests you do every single time you do something. It could break it. Deactivate all your plugins. Not quite sure why you need to do that, but it's probably still necessary. And then go and edit your WP config file and add in one line, WP allow multi-site true. And that will then enable you to choose a new menu item called Tools Network Setup. You go there, you fill in all your answers to the question it's asking you. Press enter, carry on, and eventually it says here's some things you need to do. You need to update your WP config file, and it shows the code you need to add into that. And it also need to update your .htaccess file. That's assuming that you are using Apache. If you happen to be Nginx, it might be slightly different, and that's why you need to go and watch that video, because it tells you all about that stuff. And the next thing you know, you have yourself a WordPress multi-site site installed over the top of your original WordPress website. If you happen to be a person that is using the right sort of hosting system and you want to create a new site, sometimes when you say, I'd like to install WordPress, he says, do you want to be multi-site? And you say, yes, please. And then it's all done for you, which is nice. So once you have created your WordPress multi-site site, you now get some new menu items, one of which is My Sites. And within there, there's a network admin menu item. And from that, you can choose dashboards, sites, users, themes, plugins, settings, updates, upgrade network. Each of these things is slightly different from what you saw when you were an admin for your single site installation. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and look at those both in a slide and also in the demo form. Down here are the links to the different articles that you can find on WordPress.org documenting all the sort of stuff we talk about. So we're going to dashboard. And here we can see in my demo site, which is called s.b/wp63, which is a site inside my local machine, I've created a multi-site network. And I have clicked on the help link, which you see at the top of the dashboard window, and it tells you all about it. And you can see a couple of links here, which I've repeated down here for you to go and read. So the multi-site network dashboard gives you a right now meta box. They're not called meta boxes, dashboard box, which enables you to click on create a new site to create a new site, or create a new user, or you can go and search for users and sites, which is what the help tells us. And you can see I did the screen capture recently, and here we have a current meeting, WordPress Portsmouth Meetup. This is what a network admin gets to see. And the network admin is the person who has created the WordPress multi-site, and he's a higher level user, he or she is a higher level user than the site admin that you were before. So when we go and have a look at different sites, we will see I here have created a couple of sites, and these sites are subfolder sites. There's two different types of way of doing this. You can have subfolder sites or subdomain sites, and we'll come to that later. Here you can see I've actually created two sites as per a standard example from WordPress.org. Moving on to the users. So we see in this situation, I have created a user ID called WP, and I'm the super admin of the sites. I can administer the sites called SBWP63 and the subsites of Site 1 and Site 2. What we don't see here is other users of the system. This is because this is when I first created it, and I've now added further users. Hold on, I've got to let some people in. I don't know where they went to. How did David and Paul disappear?
Not sure what happened there. My
You
network
back?
dropped. Yeah, I'm back.
Did you miss much?
I don't know, the last minute or two, I'd say, something like that.
I went to go and see Spike Milligan once upon a time in Portsmouth, and someone came in late, and he said, "Oh, sorry you're late. I'll start again." So here we go. We did that.
Yeah.
So these are different things, and then I went to the dashboard and said, "Have a look at the help because that's got some links you can find." And then we skipped over sites because I wanted to say about different types of users, but here we've only got one user who is the admin user. Now, if I was to go to my site here, this is the site I was demonstrating, and I went to network admin users. We will see over the last couple of days, I have myself here as the super admin, as WP, But I've also created two other users, Bobbing Wide and VSGL Oik, which stands for Very Smelly Grubby Little Oik. And they have access to a number of different sites themselves. Now, I'm not going to click on those yet. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and move on a bit and see some other things. So the network admin themes, as a super admin, you have the ability to decide which themes are available to all the different sites in your network, and you can enable or disable those themes. If you don't enable any of them, then the default theme will become for WordPress single site will become the default theme for all the other different sites. So here, in this case, I only had 2023 because it's a brand new install of WordPress 6.3. And similarly, you have plugins, and you start off with, well, probably start off with Hello Dolly and Akismet, but I don't have any of those in this WordPress multi-site installation. What I do have is one called WordPress Multi-Network, which enables me to convert my multi-site site into a multi-network site. I did do that, and I've deactivated it in this example for the time being. But here we can see that the network administrator can manage the plugins and the themes, and then he can decide whether or not the administrators of the sites can actually do things with themes themselves, with plugins and themes themselves. And you can do some of that through the settings page, network admin settings. Now, this is just the first part of the settings, where it's like a normal site. You set up the title of it and you set up the overall email of it. The first option after that is to decide whether or not people can register themselves for sites, and they can register themselves to be users, or they can register themselves to, or you can set up the system so that people can register new sites in the system, or you can set it up so that people can both sign up and register a site at the same time. And that's what WordPress.com enables, but probably doesn't do it just using the out-of-the-box version, and we'll ask Paul about that in a while. So if you go to Network Admin Settings, and once you've installed WordPress Multisite, go to Setup, this shows you how you should have configured your site. So the first section of it, starting with define multisite true, is the code that you copy into your wp-config.php file. And in this particular instance, we're installed with subdomain installer false, which means we're using subdirectories. And the next few settings say that when you go to visit the site, by default, it's s.p/wp63, that's site number 1, and it's blog number 1 within site number 1, network number 1. And then there's some interesting code that goes into the .htaccess file that ensures that when people click on particular URLs, it takes you to the right place. Having done that, your site is then set up. So once your site's set up, when it comes to updating things, you have one site which contains WordPress and plugins and themes, and that may have multiple different sites which have different content and could use different themes and different plugins. And when you perform updates as a super administrator, you perform the updates for all the plugins and all the themes across all the sites. So you do it once and multiple sites are updated. And here we can see that there are no updates to apply because I've already done it. But having updated WordPress to version 6.3, for example, you then have to apply those updates across all the sites in the network. You may find that if you go and visit the site that it says There's not much to do. It might say the WordPress has been updated and you need to upgrade the network. So you click on the upgrade network button and it goes through all the different sites one by one, performing the updates of the database and whatever else. And then you click on the next sites button. If it doesn't automatically page on, and eventually it says you're done and your site's maintained. Lovely. But is it lovely? And so we have to have a look at why do we want to install WordPress Multisite in the first place? Was there a good reason for doing it? On the left-hand side of these tables, I have the pros of what you might want to do WordPress Multisite for, and is it a good idea? On the right-hand side, I have the cons. Why would it not be a good idea to do something? And we can see I have put some ticks for yes, it could happen, and some crosses for no, that's not really a good idea, and some question marks for you decide. No, it depends. Could be a good idea, it could be a bad idea, and some blanks are I haven't quite decided whether or not it's a good idea. And people who have already used WordPress Multisite will have their opinions about these different things. So, a nice simple one. If you only need one WordPress website, then it's not a good idea to have WordPress Multisite because it just makes it more complicated. If, however, you have lots of similar sites with the same customer set, and those customers might be in a university or some education establishment, or they might all be different departments of the same company and so on, then it might make sense to use a WordPress multi-site installation and allow each different division, group, section to have their own sites. And therefore, you can set up a WordPress multi-site. If, however, you have you're a say a freelancer and you have multiple customers, and each of those customers have completely different websites with different business requirements, and they might want to have their own emails and all that sort of stuff, and it's probably not a good idea to set them all up under the same WordPress multi-site site, even though you can maintain their sites nice and easily, or theoretically, it could become a problem sometime in the future. So it would be better to have multiple WordPress websites. And so you can go through that list. And now, as you can see, I've left a couple of blanks there because I moved them from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, such as if you want to have a test site or a staging site, can you do that inside a multi-site environment? And the answer is, well, you could have test data, which you could then take from one site to another site. But if you were going to be testing plugins and or themes, then that's not a good idea because you would be sharing the same plugins and themes. And as soon as you update it on the test site, it will be updated on the live site, which is what you don't want. Any comments on that, Paul?
Yeah. So yeah, plugin upgrades are across the network, I suppose. Yeah. You probably could install various versions of the plugins side by side, right, and have them linked in different ways, but yeah, that's tricky.
I've tried that and it does get confusing. Right, any other reasons why you want to have a WordPress multi-site site that I didn't mention? Oh yes, right. So audiences in multiple languages could be one reason for doing it. You'd have one site which is set up for English, US, another site set up for English, UK, another site for French, another site for Russian, and so on. And they could all share the same plugins, but they basically have content which has been created in different languages. And that might make it easier to manage than having completely separate sites or other plugins to do it. So going right back to the start, when we installed this multi-site thing, one of the questions it says is, how do you want to do this? And you have two choices. You can have it as a domain-based or subdomain installation, where the URLs are of the form subdomain dot main domain, or you have it as a subdirectory or subfolder installation where you visit the domain example.com and then you have a folder within there, site 1, site 2. And each of them has their own advantages and disadvantages. If you want to use subdomains, then you need to have the ability to have a wildcard subdomain set up in your hosting, and some hosting companies don't support that. If you want to have subfolders, then you basically say subdomain install is false, and you don't have to worry about the wildcard subdomains. In both of those installations, you can use a thing called domain mapping, so that the person who's visiting the site doesn't actually know necessarily that they're visiting a site which is part of a multi-site installation. On the left-hand side, you'll see real examples. We have a site called wppompey.wordpress.com, which is a site which is part of wordpress.com, and there's very little content on there. WordPress.org has a site called learn.wordpress.org, which is what we're going to hopefully discuss next month at WP Pompey. And I have a site called wp-a-to-z.org, which has a subdomain in site called blocks.wpa-to-z.org, which is where I write about WordPress blocks and WordPress full site editing or block-based themes. And these are all subdomain installations. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, in the subdirectory install, a website called sneakpeek.me, which happens to be a subdirectory installation which has been domain mapped to a domain called sneakpeek.me, top10wpplugins.com, which is also domain mapped, and another one, bobbingwy.com, WP Pompey, March 2012, which is where I gave a presentation about shortcodes all those many years ago. And then a month later, I gave a presentation to WordUp Brighton called WP Brighton, April 2012. Would you like to talk about domain mapping, Paul?
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit, I suppose. I suppose that on WordPress.com we allow you to register or bring your own domain, and we use this functionality basically, I suppose, to map the domains to your WordPress.com site. All the WordPress.com stuff is on subdomains rather than subdirectory stuff. But yeah, all the automatic properties like jetpack.com and woocommerce.com and stuff are just domain mapped WordPress.com sites, I suppose. So that's another real world example of it.
Are you allowed to tell us how many thousands of different sites there are in WordPress.com?
There are hundreds of millions. Right? So,
millions?
Yeah.
How many are active?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've got some stats on the WordPress.com about page, and we get about 70 million posts, I think, a month. So let me check that. So while I'm quoting that, because I was looking for that. Yeah, 70 million posts a month. We get 20 billion page views each month as well. About 500,000 unique visitors. There's
where are
WordPress
you?
What's that, sorry?
Where are you in that picture?
I am in there somewhere. I'm around the middle. So let me see whether I can find me. I've forgotten where I am now. Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle, somewhere.
So that's quite a few sites per person.
How do you mean, sorry? That's that.
Well, how many? There about 1,000 people there?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was that's a few years ago now, I think. Like so, but yeah, it's probably about 1,000 people there. That's yeah. Yeah, at the Grand Meetup. That's that.
Right, I can give a demo of subdomains. If I go to my website, bobbinwide.com, log in. Did it do it? Here we can see my sites, and we can see I have a series of different sites. Bobbinwide, this is the sneakpeek.me. Here's the word at Pompey, here's the word at Brighton, and the top 10 plugins. If I go to Network Admin Sites, we can see that this one, sneakpeek.me, is a site, and it is domain mapped to sneakpeek.me. Well, I can't actually see that it is actually a site called, how will I find that? Subdirectory of this is probably, because it's all been hidden because I've just typed over the URL of what it was to the domain I want it to be, and magically WordPress has now given me access to that website at sneakpeek.me. So if I go and visit sneakpeek.me, there I am in my full site editing sites I created a while ago.
I think the site slug should be in there still somewhere, shouldn't it?
Not in settings because it's been overwritten.
Yeah.
And it won't be obvious. All we can see and hear in that is the site.
Oh, when you go to the dashboard, it might give it to you
Dashboard
then.
there.
Yeah. Oh no.
Right, I can log in again because I haven't done the right things with cookies. Now I'm logged in as the administrator of the sneakpeek.me website, who in this case is me again. It doesn't actually tell me anywhere that this is a subdirectory install and the subdirectory is called whatever it is called. And maybe if I look at my media, I can tell. So if we go and view that file, this is, again, it's just used the domain mapping, so we can't actually tell that it has a subdirectory installation on a WordPress multi-site site. Not easily anyway. So there you go. Let's go back to PowerPoint. So we've decided to have a particular installation, and now we decide whether or not we want to have, well, here's domain mapping. So I demonstrated that at sneakpeek.me and another couple of different sites. And here we saw that entry there. Now we have the idea of saying, right, so I've set up my WordPress multi-site site, and I've decided I want to allow people to either register themselves or register whole new sites. What happens if I do this? Well, first of all, we'll have a look at what happens if you happen to have a single site installed. if you happen to go to your settings and you choose anyone can register, then if that user, a new user, goes to wp login.php action equals register, or goes to wp-signup.php, which takes them to there, then they can then fill in and register their site. So they can fill in their username and email address, click on the register button, something will be sent off to them as an email to say, okay, if you want to complete your registration, carry on, and lo and behold, you can do it. If, however, you turn off the registration stuff, when you try to go to the login action equals register, you'll get a message to say it's not allowed. If you're in WordPress Multisite, the wp signup.php is the page you get to if you happen to choose the WP login action register. If registration is disabled, then you simply get a message saying registration has been disabled. And if you happen to already been logged in as the network administrator, then it will send you a nice little message to say, hello, network administrator, did you know that your site is set up so that registration has been disabled? So you don't get very far with that. And now that's what quite a few people would do on their WordPress multi-site sites. You don't want people to register themselves as users. You just want people to access your site, and you certainly don't want people to create new sites. If you want users to register accounts so they can access the site for whatever reason, maybe it's a paid thing, then you can go to the network sites settings and say allow registrations, user accounts may be registered. And what happens is that when they go to visit WP Sign Up, they get to see a message to say get your own account. So you fill in your username and password, and in this case I filled in Bobbin Wide, and then it said, right, so this is your new username, you must activate it, an email gets sent to you, sends back gives you an activation key, you go and visit that website where you fill in the activation key, the link will automatically take you there, and lo and behold, you have a new account. And in this example, you've got a new account, but you can't actually do anything. You haven't got a site, and you're not even registered to do anything on the site that you just signed up for. So that was fairly useless, and as of course I've misunderstood what it's all about. Any ideas? Nope. Let's move on. If you want to allow a logged in user to register new sites, I've just managed to create myself a new user ID. I've just changed the settings as a super admin, and I've gone to visit WP Sign Up. And because I'm not logged in, the first thing it says is you must log in, and then you can go to new site. So I did that. I logged in as Bobbin Wide, and it says, right, here you go. You're already a member of this site. Would you like to create a new one? And I said, yes, please. And I filled in the site, and I said, I'd like to have a site called Bobbin Wide, and pressed create site, and lo and behold, a new site was created. And here we go. That's the main site. You log in. It's automatically logged me in as WP, but never mind, I can still see. So if we go and have a look at users, I can see Bobbin Wide has access to the site called WP63 and is also the administrator of the site called Bobbin Wide. The next one is you can do both. You can allow a user to create both their own user ID and register a site as well. So I did that for a user called VSGLOIK, and he created a site called Very Smelly Rabbit Alike and did all the night stuff. And lo and behold, that user can now log in to that system. Lots of different choices of how you can allow multiple people to create sites on your multi-site network. Alternatively, you can turn it all off. And it's also possible to use a hash define that prevents people from trying to visit the site, register things, and take them to a place which you don't want them to go to. And you can just redirect them to a page to say, there you go, you can't do anything on my system to register new sites, but these are the sites you can look at.
Have you changed that password, Herb?
Well, this is on my local PC, so...
Oh, right, okay, jolly good.
it doesn't matter what that
just checking
is.
you weren't going to get spammed.
I did change the password for the bobbing wide one because I knew I wasn't going to remember it and I was going to log on as that.
We can try to check.
Hmm?
We can try to go and check if you change the password or not.
Hmm. So then one of the questions was, what do you know about WordPress Multisite? And you can say, I know a lot. And in fact, I've got a multi-network site. Now, there's a plugin called WP Multi-Network, which enables you to do that. You can create more than one network with a multi-site installation. Does WordPress.com have more than one network?
No.
Really?
So it has... actually, that could WordPress.com sites and Jetpack sites are separated, and I did see somebody in the chat having a problem with Jetpack, so maybe we should talk about that at some point. But so you could see that as two different networks, but they're not really. No, they are kind of they all get a blog ID, like it's on the WordPress.com network.
Mm-hmm. How about WordPress.org? Oh, do you know about that, Olga?
No.
No.
I don't have like so much rights to poke around.
I think WordPress.org does have multi-network stuff. But if they don't, here's an example of a site that does. Let's go back to my sites network having plugins. And I might as well, I'll activate this plugin just because it helps a bit. But otherwise the sites are there. And you can see it's now created this My Networks menu item, and I have two different networks, WordPress multi-network sites, in which we have, I hope they're going to do something about this in the future. My mouse never manages to hover over the menu items. So I've now managed to create 4 sites underneath the main site of WP63. This is created for Bobbing Wide, and this is created VS Julike. But I also created a network 1 using this plugin. And this is a different network from the WordPress 6.3 multi-site one. And I've got to log into it as well. Again, something to do with cookies, which I didn't do the right stuff in my WP config file. And we have a site called Network 1. So I have 2 different networks with a number of different sites, and I can possibly have different network administrators for each of those different sites. I haven't found a sensible use for it, but I think WordPress.org probably has. That's probably a bit more than
Probably, yeah.
a 101, isn't it? Back to the PowerPoint.
I think WordPress.org might be one network, actually, because it's like learn and make and stuff like that, isn't it? Like that. What makes you think it's a multi-network?
Because of the multilingual version of it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we can always assume there must be a reason for it to have been developed.
I think we can like go and check the source code, actually.
Yeah, we could do. If you knew where to look, let's have a look at I was to log in from WordPress.org, how do I log in?
Just pick another page. It's confusing people like a lot. And I think
There we go.
someone raised question on marketing team about that we need to change this whole journey to register yourself. So you can actually participate in this one and promote this idea to make things more easy for people who are actually registering themselves on the site. So,
Right, so here I am, and I can access Make WordPress documentation. And I got my sites, but I can't actually see any different network stuff. So the English UK version of WordPress.org is just part of a subdomain, en-gb.wordpress.org, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There you go. Right, back to the PowerPoint. So there are many different plugins you could have for your WordPress multi-site site. And some plugins, of course, will be written specifically for multi-site, and some plugins will be written and have no awareness of WordPress multi-site and may be a problem if you want to use them in a multi-site environment. But it's probably not that many. Here we can see with the multi-network one, in this particular example, there's two tables in the database, one called wp_site, and that has 2 rows because there's one per network, and there's another table called wp_blogs, and that has 4 rows because I had 3 sites in the first network and 1 site in the second one. And if you click on that link, it will tell you all about the WordPress multi-network plugin. So that's it. I've run out of things to talk about other than here's some links. The first one is speaker deck from John Billion in 18th of August 2017. He gave this presentation of the A to Z WordPress multi-site to people who attended WordCamp Brighton that year. If you happen to be a WP CLI person, you can use multi-site stuff from WP CLI. I have to do that a few times. And then there's another number of different links, and some of which are videos and so on and so forth. There are 3 good videos on learn.wordpress.org. Managing a WordPress multi-site network is the second one, and advanced multi-site management is the third, the first one being the 7-minute video that I mentioned right at the start. So that's it on WordPress multi-site. Any more questions?
I wonder what are actually usages for these sites apart from, like creative ones, apart from multilingual installations?
Right, some examples. I can give you examples of what I do if I can get my computer to work. That's not it. Oh, the tab that'll do, won't it? So on my website called wp-a2z.org, I have subdomain installations to document a number of different plugins, which are part of the top 10. So each of these different sites are different sites documenting different things about different plugins and or themes. So the WordPress A to Z one, which we're looking at now, contains information about the plugins and themes which have been bundled with WordPress since a long time ago. So the plugins being Akismet and Helly Dollar, and themes being 2014 through to 2023. And if I was to click on that, it would take me to information about a particular theme. This is different from the WordPress core, which is just about the APIs in WordPress and the blocks and the shortcodes. So I have multiple sites, so I can write similar stuff, but about different things. Then we get on to WordPress SEO, WooCommerce, Jetpack. Each of these different things, I've over the years tried to document things about it. So that's my one use of a subdomain installation. Each of these different things is a separate subdomain. I even created one for BuddyPress many years ago, but I've done nothing about it for an awful long time. I don't use BuddyPress. Elsewhere, I've got sites where I want to write about different plugins and or themes which I've created for myself and use them as their own examples of those different plugins. So I have a site where I've got two plugins which are available on WordPress.org, one called Weight Zone Shipping and another one called Weight Country Shipping, which is now replaced by this one. And if you go and click on this particular site, then you can find out how weight zone shipping works, theoretically. And each of these different sites are not listed here nicely. Maybe it's in the about. So each of these different sites are listed here, a list of different sites, some of which are no longer active or shouldn't be working, and I need to change that. And for my own another site, Bobbing Wide, you saw I had multiple different sites set up, some of which were domain mapped to domains to make it easy for people to find them, and others were just subdirectories. Paul Tansom, you set up WordPress Multisite. Are you there to talk and tell us what you're using it for? No.
Oh, my headset's telling me mute is on and then mute is off, but it's not. So what's going on? Yeah, I must admit I haven't done much with it some time, but the original reason was that I set up a website with booking facilities on, and I used Multisite to set up a copy of it effectively so that people could play and learn how to use the bookings without actually creating bookings that were live for the main site. And once they knew how to use it, they could then be allowed to use the main site. So it was sort of a, learn how to use and edit the site before you actually get let loose on the live one.
So it was almost a test. It was a test, was it?
It was testing, but not sort of testing features.
Yeah.
It was so that a website editor could learn how to use the site on a a working copy of it before they get let loose, so that we didn't set up an event for a weekend that wasn't actually going to happen. So
It's
yeah,
actually interesting case to make like a playground at the same installation for people.
yes, it seemed to work quite well. I must admit I didn't make it look quite the same. I didn't sort of go into all the setting up the themes and so on to quite the same level, but all the sort of back end bits for setting up, we've got these facilities on these days that you can book, and these are the time slots and that sort of thing. All the plugins were put in there. So that was quite easy to manage together with the two sites, so they could set up, we've got repairs for this, because it was a local repair cafe, so they could put in the repairs that were available, or the repairers that were there, and the times and the length of time slots, and play around with that, and then test a booking, send it to some test email addresses rather than live email addresses, to frighten people that were doing the repairs that they had something coming in.
And you never have any intention of taking the content from the test site to the live site. They're two completely separate things.
Yeah. Once they'd learned how to use it, then they knew what they were doing when we set up a real event on the live site.
Yeah.
So I must admit, I'm quite interested by this domain mapping, which is something I think I was looking for at the time, but didn't manage to get the right search term or something. But that looks
Yes.
potentially useful for creating a new site, just sort of go in from scratch and have a lot of similarity, but a new look and feel, and then switch your domain mapping across. Because when I first set this up, I would have liked almost an admin domain name to go in and administer it, rather than, you know, my main website being the login for the multi-site bit. Because I thought, well, if I just destroy that site, take it down, then I've got to completely destroy this installation, because the new website in my new multi-site setup needs to somehow take over that domain name, and domain mapping would actually handle that quite nicely.
I've set up my wife in a multi-site environment, and I do have one site for her which is called Play Area, and that's where she writes her new blog posts, which she will then publish on her main site. And you don't have Play Areas for all the different sites. She has about 5 or 6 different websites in there, all to do with different business stuff. But the Play Area is an interesting one. However, I of course had to write and have been writing for many years, a plugin which enables her to transfer her content from the Play Area to the live site. And but she finds that quite useful, and she doesn't have local development environments like I do, and she's just doing it all on the live sites. And the Play Area is hidden from the rest of the world because using another plugin, and I can't think what that plugin is called right now. But there is a multi-site domain visibility plugin that enables you to log into a site if you happen to be the administrator, but you can't see it if you happen to be just a casual user.
Oh, that's interesting. So my son's been developing some sites, and I've thrown in a just sort of password protection on the site, but a lot of the password protections aren't that brilliant. I know the sailing club has got documentation in a password protected area, and I have no idea what they're using for the back end of it, but I was checking something because I was sending out in the newsletter a link to the document, and I realized that you didn't actually have to be logged in to get at this document if you had the direct URL. Only if you were following the links through did you ever get asked for the password. So
that's what happens with plugins that enable you to download like easy digital downloads. You know, if you know the URL and you've just uploaded it, then it's easy to get hold of it, and plugins have to protect them from that. So here's my wife's Play Area, or Susan's Play Area, and when she's written a post, it then gets published to Hampshire EFT, and the plugin I use to control that is one of these. Must be active. Maybe it's a drop-in. Nope.
Is it maybe active on the site rather than on the network?
That's true. Could be.
Although if it's copying between sites.
Network privacy plugin adds more privacy options to settings, privacy pages, and when network activated, super admin options in the site. So it's not network activated, obviously, but I should be able to see settings, privacy pages. Settings, privacy, and that's not it, is it? Well, anyway, it's in there somewhere. Any more questions? Any more experiences of WordPress multi-site that people would like to share? Steve, you tried it once. Steve Wood.
Yeah, I just had a play with it once. I didn't find it too useful. I think my biggest concern was that you've got a single point of failure, kills all the sites on it.
Yeah, let's go back to that. Broken code, yes. So if something goes wrong, then your whole WordPress multi-site system will fall over in a big heap potentially. Whereas in many sites, if something goes wrong with a plugin which has been updated, you might have multiple sites that have broken. But
same will go if your server went down.
Yeah.
Lose everything.
And the same happens if you have very high traffic, theoretically. Or
yeah, you'd soon run out of steam, I think, with your hosting.
So people can't access. But then that might happen in a shared hosting as well. If you have one website that's using an awful lot of stuff and it's causing the database to get very slow, other people might not be able to get into their other sites, even if they're single site installations.
Yeah, but in my case, I generally wouldn't have multiple sites on the same server.
For every different pro, there's a matching con, probably.
I'm sure there are uses for it, but I haven't found one with my clientele.
If you,
I see it get used more with like groups of people that all want sites, so it'd be, say, like in an education environment or something like that, and so you'd have like a main network site that would be perhaps a university website or something like that. But then each department would have their own sub-site on the network so that they could have their own blog, manage their own users, that kind of thing. Like it's a way of kind of sandboxing people between sites. Like
yeah, definitely.
And I mean, WordPress.com like is just one great big multi-site. Well, there is another sort of site which is effectively like containerized VPS type sites.
Was that for the VIP stuff?
Yeah, VIP Go is set up like that, but the main VIP sites used to be on WordPress.com as well, right? So, but there are that's how we allow you to install your own plugins now on WordPress.com, like which didn't used to be able to happen because it was one great big multi-site, and if somebody installed some, their own plugin or something like that, it could bring all the hundreds of millions of sites down, as we've just been discussing. So if you install a plugin, then we basically move your site off into a containerized environment and allow you to install plugins and your own themes and stuff like that.
But you have to pay extra money for that.
Yeah, that's where you have to pay. Right. So yeah, so the all the free sites are sort of part of the multi-site. Well, and you can pay for features on there as well. Right. So yeah.
So what the user or administrator of a WordPress multi-site who isn't the super admin gets to see is a lot less and has less capability than he used to have if he was an admin of a main site. So he can't install plugins, can't install themes, can't do what else?
Well, no, I don't think that's true for WordPress.com, because you wouldn't actually be yeah, we like if you're on one of these free sites or something like that, yeah, you're not allowed to install your own themes and stuff. But I think on a network like you've got set up, Herb, like an admin of a site can administer that site and install their own plugins and stuff like that. I think. Like so.
I can't
Is it
install
only super
plugins.
admins that can install plugins? That's
Yeah, I can activate plugins, and
right, but you can't install them. That's that.
no.
No.
But then when you're your own administrator and super administrator, it's you just log out and log back in again.
Yeah.
That's not what you can't do that if you're a WordPress.com user.
No, absolutely not. That's yeah. I mean, like it is just the WordPress software. Like we do have lots of our own sort of like custom plugins and things like that on it. Like so,
Yeah.
but the core of the software is just the core of the software. Like it's like that's running on all the app servers. Right. So, it is possible to scale this up as well. Like to run as many sites as you want, so and as many users as you want. Like so.
So when WordPress.com comes to take a backup of the database, that's not a simple task, I don't suppose.
No, it's not. No. The database is quite interesting. Like I did find a talk which is probably not very 101, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, it's also from 2017. Actually, I'll just stick it in the chat. Which is a lot about how we scale up WordPress on WordPress.com. Like so, and the database is one of the things because for each site that you create in the network, you're creating another set of database tables. And so with hundreds of millions of sites, we've got billions of database tables, like which is an interesting problem to solve. Like so there's a lot of sharding and things like that has to happen with the database.
Just having the admin pages of so many thousands of millions of things must be a challenge and a half as well.
Yeah. It's it's a lot of caching. It's like
but here we got this menu here. If a network admin person goes and looks at WordPress.com, how far does this menu go down?
You don't see a list like that. Like yeah. So that was like when Herb mentioned, has anybody got any experience with multi-site? And I said, oh well, WordPress.com's just a big multi-site. We thought, oh, it might be quite nice to show you behind the scenes, but actually a lot of it does just look like this. But I'm a bit nervous about leaking stuff in our internal tools. And also our internal tools probably aren't for, public consumption. They're not very, so they're very internal. So, but yeah, it does look remarkably similar, I would say, to like a vanilla install like this.
Right. Well, it's now 8:15, and I'm just going to go through what I normally do at the end of the thing, which is to tell you about things that's happening in WordPress and things that are happening in wppompey and so on. So we get to the end here. Right, so thank you very much to our global community sponsors. This year are GoDaddy Bluehost, Weglot, Automatic, and WooCommerce. Here we go. We've now got 539 Meetup members. We're doing quite well at the moment. The number of groups has gone up again to 716, and that means there's now more than 500,000 WordPress members on Meetup. Brighton's membership is 669, Bournemouth's disappeared, Bristol's disappeared, and Tunbridge Wells disappeared, and Exeter are still wondering what to do about COVID. That's the charts of our Meetup statistics, nearly up to date. this is what's happened recently. WordPress 6.3 was released on the 8th of August, and for most people hasn't caused major problems. Most people haven't realized what's available in there yet, but there are nice videos you can watch. Isn't that right, Olga?
I think so.
Yeah, good. And next weekend, yeah, is the 2023 Community Summit, followed by the WordCamp US. And in September, even though WordCamp London wasn't managed to get organised, there is a WordCamp Whitley Bay up north somewhere. And as Olga said, WordPress 6.4 is already underway, and these are the different dates for the different betas and release candidates until eventually it gets released on the 7th of November. If you want to find out what WordCamps are on, go to centralwordcamp.org/schedule. If you want to find out about WordPress 6.4 and all of the team that are developing it, then go to make-WordPress.org course tag 6-4.
That's another multi-site site, WordCamp.org.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, that might be multi-network because you have a separate site per
And different
year
years.
that the WordCamp runs. That's, I don't know enough
Never thought
about
of
it.
it.
But
So many sites. Full site editing themes. The challenge at the end of last year was to have 500 themes. That's what Matt Mullenweg suggested. We don't have that yet. We've got 391. But if you choose all the different style variations, which are the colors and fonts and so on, if you chose any one of those themes, you might have up to 10 different style variations. So there's 1,035 to choose from now from WordPress.org. But compare that to 11,152 themes, which are the total number of themes. So take off the 391 and you've got the number of themes which aren't full site ones. And here that at bottom chart on the right hand side shows the growth since January 22 of themes. So there's been over 2,000 themes being created on the classic style and 390 something created in the block-based one. This is what we did last year. This year, today, we've done WordPress Multisite 101, and next month, on the 27th of September, which is the last Wednesday of the month, we hope to have people from learn.wordpress.org telling us about learn.wordpress.org. So there's a couple of Courtneys. Is that right, Olga? Do you know them?
Yeah.
And Abba, hopefully, is going to tell us all about that one.
Cool.
And then in October, we discussed a number of different things, and certain people are going to talk about certain things. Olga suggested she wants to talk about testing and core triage and underrepresented groups. And
Am I?
That's what you said. Drew said he'd talk about Mastodon. You wanted to know about web stories, and Andrew Leonard could tell us a bit about that. And then there's something to do with PHP 8 through to 8.2. And also, I've written down Web Squadron, but I have absolutely no idea what it means. Anyone want to admit to that? So that would be a show and tell in October, and then I don't know what to do in November and December. Coming to the end now. Did you know the WordPress 6.3 has been downloaded 200 million times? The latest version of Gutenberg is 16.4. There are 59,660 plugins available from WordPress.org as of Monday. There are 861 new plugins awaiting review, but there's a 62-day backlog, which is quite long. I've got a plugin that's sitting on that list. 11,152 themes, of which 391 are full site editing block-based themes. And the total number of plugin downloads from WordPress.org since counting started, is 9 billion, which is a lot. Thank you very much to our sponsors from ages ago who used to give us money to go and have pizzas and have meetings in the Technopole. Now that we're meeting online, we don't actually have those sponsors giving us any money, but we still like to thank them for it. That is the end of today's meeting. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you've all benefited from it. I'm going to press stop now, and then we can have chats about anything else you'd like to talk about.